All right. So, let me tell you guys my story as framed through 4 questions that radically changed my life. The first question was a rather innocuous question asked me by my art teacher my junior year of high school. He turned to me and said, "Tucker, what are you doing this Saturday?" And I turned around and was like, I don't really have a plan. He's like, "I have an idea." He wanted us to go to a park in Philadelphia, set up these large oil paintings, and use them to start conversations about Jesus. And of course, my answer to that was absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I don't want to go to Philly, and I especially don't want to talk to strangers about Jesus. But after a brief period of him mocking me and my masculinity, I finally gave in and I said, "All right, fine, let's go and let's do it." So that Saturday, we packed up the car, we drove to Philly, we set up our easels, our oil paintings. I get out my palette and my paintbrush, and I start painting this modern interpretation of the stoning of Stephen. And over the next 4 to 5 hours, people would stop, they would watch, they would ask questions, they would start conversations, and I would do my best as a 16-year-old kid to answer their questions and talk about Jesus, but it was the easiest form of evangelism I'd ever experienced. And at the end of the day, as we're packing up, nobody got saved. There was no miracles performed during that time, but there was something stirring inside of me through this process. And as we pack the car and we drive away, I turn to my art teacher and I ask him the second question that radically changed my life. What could God do through a painting? And that question that I asked, God answered, and he basically said, "Watch this." And he downloaded this vision and these dreams of reaching people in the world using art to do it. Art is interesting. Since we were created, we have been obsessed with creating things. We are obsessed with art. We are obsessed with building and growing and cultivating these things. We go to galleries and look at these pictures because they speak to our souls. And if art is so powerful, shouldn't it be used for the advancement of the kingdom of heaven? Well, as I thought about these things, they percolated for a long time. Fast forward, I end my second semester of college, and I decide that's enough schooling for me. I'm done. And God turned to me, and he spoke to me, and he said, "It's time. What could God do through a painting?" So I dropped out of college, borrowed a truck, traveled down to Key West, Florida, and spent 3 months living out of my truck, setting up on street corners, boardwalks, town centers, wherever there were people. I was there with a canvas and an easel telling them about Jesus. And it was the 3 hardest and hottest months of my life. Living out of your car in Florida in June is an absolute nightmare. But those 3 months of difficulty led to painting freedom, where now I travel the country painting and preaching the gospel at churches, conferences, workshops, outreaches, music festivals, whatever you can think of. I've probably gotten to do it at this point. What could God do through a painting? Well, in the past 18 months alone, being able to lead 1,800 plus people to the Lord for the first time, thousands more rededications, seeing lives changed and transformed by the power of the gospel. And guess what? There's no painting that's good enough to do that, but a painting in the hands of God can change a life and spark revival. But then as I would prep for these events and prepare to go on the road, I would be on my front porch in Chester getting supplies ready, and I'd look out the window and I would see young people wandering the streets. And as they wandered the streets, they would find friends. And those friends eventually would wander with them and eventually would lead to trouble that too often ended in gun violence. A young man walking home from school in our community was gunned down by 3 adults who just wanted his cell phone, shot him in the street, left him for dead. And as I heard these stories of tragedy, my heart broke and I said, "God," and asked another question. Could you rescue kids with art? Could you rescue kids with art, God? And so God downloaded this picture, this vision of how can we create a space where kids can belong. In my own life, when my life broke down when I was in middle school and high school, I found 2 places that I belonged, my church and my art room. And I thought, how do we create spaces for kids to belong in Chester? So we launched Legacy Arts Chester, where kids from all over our community come to a free after-school art program where they can belong, number one, where they can grow, and then when they can be empowered to transform the legacy of their own community. And we've had over 100 families register in our programs. I've had kids that I got in like 4th and 5th grade that are now graduating. And guess what? They're the teachers. They're the leaders. They're the ones that are mentoring the next generation because we are empowering them to change a legacy. Could God rescue a kid using art? He absolutely can. But as I would go and I would pick up kids from their houses in these neighborhoods, I would see these homes where there's graffiti on the walls, where the roofs are leaking, where the windows are broken, and I would just think, God, how can we transform our city and transform our community? Could you use a painting to transform a broken city? And God said, once again, watch this. And the vision for what is now known as the Painted City came to be a citywide transformative effort to change the exterior of our community, where we take broken down, blighted spaces and we transform them through public art, through mural projects. And guys, I can't even tell you what's been happening through this. It's been remarkable. As I was working on this painting with our team, I'd be up on a lift and I would see cars peeling off 95, coming next to this building, and people would fall out of their cars, weeping uncontrollably, asking for prayer, talking about how God is moving in the city, how their lives are being changed because there is hope. It reminds me of the Tolkien quote that inspired this piece along with Van Gogh, where he said, "The shadow is only a passing thing. There is light and beauty forever beyond its reach." Even if someone tags up the bottom 8 feet, they can't touch the image above. And we are seeing people come to Christ. We did a mural unveiling, all right, and our city council person gets up, grabs the mic, starts preaching the gospel, and we start baptizing people who are getting saved under the shadow of this building. What could God do through a painting? And guys, I'm not here today to testify to Tucker's a really good painter or Tucker can do this or that. I'm here to testify that in my hands, a painting is just a painting, but in the hands of God is the seeds of resurrection. And so my question to you this morning is, what gifts have you been given? What have you been given? And I give you this charge. You were created to create. You were created to build. You were created to cultivate. You were not created to consume. God has given you gifts. He has given you talents. He has given you inspiration. He has given you vision. And too often we sit on our hands saying, God, I don't know what to do with this. And God says, I know you don't know what to do, but watch what I can do. And when our gifts are placed in the hands of God and we surrender to Him, He can take your gifts, loaves and fishes, and multiply them far beyond what you could ever imagine. What could God do through a painting? Let me tell you real quick. Here's a couple things that God can do through a painting. In the past couple of years since we started this ministry, over 300,000 people have been reached with the gospel. 8,000 plus have given their lives to Jesus Christ for the first time. Thousands upon thousands more have rededicated their lives to Jesus Christ. 100 plus families in legacy programs, 20 plus murals that are transforming the face of a blighted city have already begun or are in process. And I've even told you about the boarding school we're building in Tanzania and rescuing kids in the wilderness of Africa and using art to fund the whole thing. This is what God does. As we give Him our gifts, as we place them in His hands, He takes it and does abundantly above all we could ever ask or think. So in your own life, I want you to ask this question to yourself right now. Have I been burying this gift that God has given me? Maybe it's not art, okay, maybe it's accounting, okay, because I can't do accounting, but accounting used for the kingdom of heaven can change the world. You see, guys, our gifts are not for ourselves. Our gifts are for others. Our gifts are meant to be used for the kingdom of heaven. So let me ask you, what is your passion? Where do you have vigor? What holy discontent do you have in this world that you look at everything you see and you say, I can no longer allow this to continue. I can no longer allow this to continue on. Because whatever that holy discontent is, that's where God is leading you. A painting in my hands is just a picture. A painting in God's hands can change a life. Because there is a great truth that each and every one of us need to understand. And if you don't hear anything else from me this morning, I need you to hear this because it changed my life and it can change yours. It's that surrendered creativity can change the world. Thank you guys so much.